Okay, so I'm gonna call the meeting to order, and can we do roll call?
Member Cho,
Here.
Member Fain,
Here.
Member Lindsay, Member Oji,
Here.
Member Rios is absent, and Member Trinkle
Here.
and Akini is absent.
Okay, does anyone want to read the land acknowledgement?
For it. I don't have the paper.
Read it.
I'll read for you. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Lijon. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community, and we will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home.
Okay, now we can approve last meeting's minutes.
So we need a motion and a second.
Can I motion?
Sure.
Oh, I can motion to pass these minutes.
I second.
Member Cho,
Yes.
Member Fain,
Yes.
Member Lindsay, Member Oji,
Yes.
Member Trinkle.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, now we move on to public comment.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. I would like to thank you individually for your time and intention to serve the community of Albany. And I know these gifts of time and intention will grow exponentially as you come together collectively. I pray that you, as the Racial Inclusivity and Social Equity Commission, strengthen in spirit and materiality the pledge spoken in your land acknowledgement. Please increase your connection with the natural world. Seek the strength, stamina, and wisdom the natural world offers you. Please increase individually and collectively with the natural world and accept the gifts of wisdom, strength, and stamina it offers you. Connected to your acknowledgement to the Ohlone people, I encourage you to strengthen or renew your contact with your ancestral lands and make the connection between what the Ohlone view of life offers and the view that comes from your own ancestral homelands. We're in the process of coming together these days, and especially now in this season of the Day of the Dead. Connection is flourishing globally. So I thank you for all your efforts in this. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment. Is there any other public comment?
No public comment online.
Okay, now we're moving on to announcements from staff and commission members. Any announcements? No? Okay. It looks like there are no announcements. So now it's public comment for presentations.
No, it's just straight on to presentations.
Okay, and we have a presentation for Hip Hop for the People.
Folks, how y'all doing? Thank you for inviting me to speak. My name is Kafri J. I run a couple businesses, hip-hop organizing, education, and I started my journey in San Francisco in a place called Hunters Point, not Bayview. I went to a private school. My dad, he worked 2 jobs. My mom worked 1. To put us in there was a big leap until they couldn't afford it any longer. And I got dropped into James Lick Middle School. At that time, it was, San Francisco has always been one of the highest income inequality cities in the nation, very segregated. We used to have race wars between the black and Latino kids due to the poverty and segregation white people put us in the decades of, racism. And when I couldn't find my own power and my own efficacy, I did what a lot of black kids do. And so I kind of got into the bad stuff. And I remember me and 4 of my kids, 4 of my homies, we tried to get back on the right path. So we got a job at the SF League of Urban Gardens. And I remember a week after we started working, we got our first paychecks. We were going to get video games. And so we went to the Bayview Bank. And I don't know what 4 black 15-year-old kids look like to you walking into a bank, but to somebody it looked like we were robbing the bank, which is what was told to the 40 or 50. I don't know how many cop cars filled the bank plaza, but they beat us with guns and they beat us with fists. And I had stucco prints on my forehead. That happened again. I remember saying hello to a police officer in front of Pac Bell. And that ended up with me on the hood, telling him telling me he was going to beat me worse than I ever had been beaten in my life. I remember that happened in front of Holly Park. My little nephew had an orange safety gun, and somebody said that he pointed a gun at her. So me and 5 of his older friends, we got beaten up at gunpoint as well. I used to work in level 12 group homes, seeing kids dealing with the same stuff that I've dealt with. I used to, move and catch the 44 out of my neighborhood going to college, and I'd be the only black kid in the room. I'd be, job, I'd be the only black guy there. Especially as a black man, you know what I'm saying? I don't really code switch. I remember my first job at AMC 1000 Van Ness, and I had to cut my hair, and I cried. And it's the first time I cried in a while, because I don't cry very easily. White folks are beating that out of me. When black kids have about 50% access to art classes as white kids, you know what I'm saying? It's very difficult for our kids who are geniuses to fall into these schools that are so underfunded by white voters as a collective who lack empathy collectively. And we are faced with that today. In a city like San Francisco, where 40% of the unhoused people are black, 37 point something, I don't know. In a place like Oakland, where 40% of the budget is spent on policing people that look like me, and everybody knows it. And everybody knows it, and they see it. We have a president who said he would no longer drill in federal lands. And his only reasoning for just breaking that promise is because, he said it might lose in litigation. That's a sucker where I'm from. We got a president who is funding genocide, and people are watching this, and they're watching this propaganda on our most liberal right wing and every other nation and every other media spy in between. I I think what we have a problem with is forgetting Martin Luther King talking about the white moderate being the biggest roadblock to equality, and that's what we're dealing with. And that's what I'm holding in my chest as I come to speak here tonight, because I'm really sick and tired. Last year, I threw the largest environmental hip-hop summit in the nation under the Golden Gate Bridge. I used to do a lot of stuff that relied on, white voters to hopefully care pretty soon that we are being grounded up by the machine, and there's no Mario Savios out here no more. You know what I'm saying? But I'm no longer going to do that. I can no longer put my energy behind white moderate voters and white moderate candidates. And I'm a grassroots worker, so I stand in Albany sometimes saying, hey, do you care about black people? And I get screamed at for asking people if I care about black people. I get touched inappropriately by rich white women. I have people call the police on me. And I do this daily because my job is to stop division. You know what I'm saying? So I implore you folks to understand that. In your roles here, what you're doing, it's really hard to separate that from a system that is designed to keep going and keep the status quo up. You know what I'm saying? You guys have meetings to pass, and a lot of people, it just doesn't work. When we get a black DA in Oakland, all right, or some DA that wants to give black people a shred of a chance, like Chester Badine, white people go up in arms and vote them out. You know what I'm saying? This is the body politic we're dealing with. So if you want to change the situation for black people, it cannot be an Albany-based thing. You know what I'm saying? There's not that many black people here anyway, you know what I'm saying? What about my brothers in Hunters Point and Fillmore? What about my brothers in Oakland? So I implore you, if you want to bring some inclusivity and some racial justice, how do you make your body politic the shining beacon of investment in justice and making sure that we're not predating on black and brown people when they drive through Albany? Because I'll tell y'all straight up, I've gone to clubs out here. I've been to rap shows out here, you know what I'm saying? And I get home as fast as I can. I do, because I stand out, and I don't like the code switch. What can y'all do to change Oakland? You know what I'm saying? What can y'all do to change San Francisco? What can y'all do with your dollars to call these other places out in the Bay Area? Because this is one of the most racist places in the nation. You know what I'm saying? It's one of the most segregated places in the nation. And I don't know what you can do as a body, but it has to be something more than just talking about it. And it can't be something that's just based in this city. It has to be something like organizing, like we had maybe in the 60s, you know what I'm saying? Like the movements that created ethnic studies programs, because people are burning books and we're blowing up kids in Palestine, and everybody's cool with it collectively. So I think your North Star needs to be, what can you do to make white voters, because mind you, black people vote the same damn near. I know we're not a monolith, but we pretty much vote the same. We can pretty much see who's best for us. It's white people that have been collectively debating our humanity for so long that I'm sick of playing the game of this two-party fox and political wolf system. And that's it. If you want some justice, if you want some inclusivity, it's not gonna be y'all, because y'all look like a beautiful group of people, you know what I'm saying? Y'all are sitting here. What about the people in Albany, the mostly white folks that are gonna grab their babies when I'm doing my job and advocating for racial justice? More than half of people grab their babies, and I tell them I'm full, I don't eat babies, thank you. But our kids, they don't have the same wit that I practiced for 15 years working with white people in your city. So what can you do to change Oakland with your dollars? What can you do to change not the brown people, the black people? To be quite honest, I don't really need inclusivity. I just want people to stop grabbing their babies, and I want them to stop looking at me. How do you focus your efforts on the white moderate voters to make some radical change? Because if you can't make that happen, it's gonna be another 100 years of black and brown people getting grounded up by the machine while white people keep debating, is this really bad or is it this or that? So what can we do to make some radical change with your power? I don't know how to answer that, but I hope y'all really ask yourselves that. How can you call out the cities next door? How can you call out your own citizens that make it very uncomfortable for people like me just to walk down the streets here? I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we do public comment for the presentations now?
There's no public comment online.
Usually there's some discussion. Ask him questions. Was there any public comment?
Yeah, there can be.
Yeah, you can public comment.
I would like to thank you for what you've said. I'm sure you heard him. There are some of us in this town that are working to do what he's asking for. And one thing I forgot to mention earlier when I was talking about including contact with the natural world, I would invite you individually to come to the Gill Tract Farm when you can, and we can talk about some of these issues. And as we are in contact with the natural world there, thank you.
Thank you. So we can have a discussion about the presentation.
I mean, I was wondering if you could tell folk about the stuff that you got going on with helping people and the other thing you're talking about.
Word. I guess I got carried away. I'm usually good at marketing myself. So yeah, I guess, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what's best for me, and I've been an activist for a while. And I got into the nonprofit industrial complex, and that didn't really fit me well. I was the only black dude there. And all the while, I see people who are addressing issues, from all the money in philanthropy going to people who are getting whiter and older. And I couldn't see myself there. And mind you, black people, I grew up by the Navy Hunters Point shipyard, you know what I'm saying? And I used to work at Greenpeace, and they didn't work on that. I had to speak about orangutans to get the closest that I could to anything that I really identified with. Because they're beating up orangutans in the jungle and burning down their homes, and I really identify with that. So, I try to figure out a way where I can use what I know, grassroots funding, to help my community, and that's hip-hop. Hip-hop's the strongest cultural organizing tool we have, I was lucky enough to start the largest hip-hop education nonprofit on the planet, Hip Hop for Change. We taught, up until I left in January, 33,000 kids K through 12, the culture of hip-hop and how to use it. A lot of kids don't really have connection to their culture because white people have taken that from them with their dollars. A lot of people don't know three companies, due to the 96 Telecommunications Act, own 90% of the means of producing rap music. And we don't really have that much money, so the three companies are really not FUBU, right? They're making music for mostly suburban white men, make up about 70% of consumers. Said white men don't really want to hear, for instance, black women say anything that'll make them feel bad, you know what I'm saying? Probably just behinds and what we see. So we get blamed for that disenfranchisement, and I think our kids lack those narratives. They lack connection to their culture, yet all our kids are primed for using hip-hop, right? The 10 elements of it: street knowledge, street entrepreneurialism, fashion, right? Health and wellness, DJing, graffiti art, beatboxing. So yeah, it makes sense to me when I go do DEI work in a school, and I look at this music teacher who's yelling at his kids because they don't want to, play William Tell's Overture, they're distracted. And a tuba costs twice as much as a set of Technique turntables, FYI. So we could scratch William Tell's Overture, and these kids are amazed, and they're present. And I hear teachers say it all the time in my classes: I've never seen these kids so focused. And I used to joke around and say, well, you've never used their culture. But recently I've been saying, then why are you teaching black and brown kids? If you've never seen these kids so focused, then why are you teaching black and brown kids? And so for the last 15 years, I've been trying to find some way to make sure these kids have a connection to the most powerful organizing tool they have. And I've done that through education. I've done that through event planning, where we've thrown cannabis equity summits, women's empowerment summits, all kind of events where we can actually get the artists that resonate with our local community. I do a radio show on KPOO, Hip Hop for the People Radio. I played 2 songs that weren't from the Bay in a decade. So we have these platforms, but we need to make sure that our people have connection to that. So I've been figuring out how to organize money. A lot of that comes through grants. And it's really stunning when I constantly have to validate my culture as a tool for impact before I tell people what I want to do on the grants. So, I've done the largest hip-hop ed nonprofit in the world. Right now I run an S Corp that connects businesses to marketing solutions rooted in hip-hop. I throw hip-hop events that connect health and wellness resources to different communities. Check out the Drip Fest, K through 12 education. But essentially, my main job is trying to get people paid. Hip hop is where we find our griots in our community. You know what I'm saying? It's where kids break dance, and half the breakers are vegan now. You know what I'm saying? They start talking about vestibular sense appropriation, maybe using different terms. Graffiti artists have their own chiaroscuro. So when these kids don't have, comfort going into these galas, with all the wines and the meats and cheeses, but they feel cool with their homies because they don't have an art class, but they can go learn from their OGs some graffiti techniques and feel safe and feel like they don't have to code switch. I make sure that we have safe spaces that are funded for that, and that our OGs aren't going hungry, spending their labor in suffocating white spaces where they're not being geniuses, where they're gonna have a paid job, actually being a genius for our culture and our community. And everybody else is welcome. So that's what I've been doing.
Anyone else have any questions?
I just think it's amazing, so I appreciate you coming and sharing. Did I have a question? I did, and then I forgot it because I was just listening.
Well, I don't turn down microphones as an MC, so I can't. So, yeah.
Oh, okay, my question was, okay, you said you stand like around and what do you ask people again?
Yeah, so I was the first, Greenpeace that they reinvested in the grassroots fundraising teams, and I think it was late 2000s, and I was one of the first I was the first black city coordinator. I ran the entire Bay Area street fundraising team, so that's where I cut my teeth in grassroots. Back then, we said, hey, you care about polar bears, and so when I started Hip Hop for Change, I was based that off of grassroots models. So I cut my teeth standing in really white neighborhoods, Danville to Palo Alto, Mill Valley. The more racist the place seems like there's more white people that really don't like that. So I make more support. If you can stomach being in Danville wearing shirts like this. But yeah, the first thing you'll hear me say is, do you care about black people? I say that to probably 200-300 people a day in a really, really, really white neighborhood, and I get a myriad of responses. A lot of them hostile. For example, I was in Lafayette in front of the Trader Joe's. I had to talk to the police and got yelled at by the 80-year-old lady who seemingly owns the property. And I had to stand out there being threatened by the police, telling them I shall not move. And I do that to meet 30 people a day. And if they say, yeah, I do, I say, do you care enough to spend 2 minutes so we can stop dying disproportionately all around you? And I wear hats like this because if people can't handle that, if they can't take this, it's kind of a litmus test, and they probably won't support me anyway. And I only have so much emotional energy to use. So after that, I go through a brief synopsis of how we've had our culture taken from us and how we need it and how I use it for health and wellness impact events. And I tell people to give me all their money, and then I take that back to the hood and invest it in health and wellness resources in our neighborhood.
That's cool.
Sometimes.
It is. Do you do it alone?
Yeah, I do.
I probably should just ask you this when the meeting's over, but.
Yeah, no, you're good. Well, back at my old organization, we had over 900 co-workers go through our grassroots program, fundraising. It's a pretty good model. It brings in a lot of money. But me now, by myself, it supplements my contract work. So, yeah. By myself, I'm dolo. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, dangerously solo. It comes from the early 90s. It's like being solo, but more emphasis on your aloneness. Dolo.
Maybe temporarily alone, you've done this before.
No, when I'm canvassing in a really white neighborhood, you feel very alone. Akin to if you're a woman in a room full of 100 dudes that she didn't know. I feel exactly the same. And there's an added, I'm a black man with a gold grill. And I'm saying things that make most white people uncomfortable, so there's an extra level to it. But, I'm trained, I'm prepared, and I have hands, so.
Yes. You just told me to turn your mic on, dude, except you said it nicer. I'm wondering if there is an event or something that could be done in Albany, or if that would even be meaningful.
Yeah.
There are a lot more black folk in Richmond, say, than there are in Albany. It's true. So it could be something, that we're promoting in Richmond. There are a fair number of black kids that go to Albany schools.
I'm here for them.
The family lives here, and sometimes they've transferred in for the better schools.
Yeah.
that's about the only organized black group that I know of in Albany. They're called the Black Parents Engagement Group. I don't know, do you think there's some kind of event we could maybe do in Albany that would make sense?
I think the best way to answer that is the reason why I've been able to raise $7 million isn't because it shouldn't have been $100 million. You know what I'm saying? It's because there were $7 million worth of mostly white philanthropists that said, you know, this is valuable. And so I get money, I invested in people who will make it pop, make it crack. And so, you know, hip hop is definitely not a black thing. It's from black people, and we take the, you know, we could pull the cards at any time, you know what I'm saying? But hip-hop is for everybody. It's rooted in the principal tenets of peace, love, unity, and having fun. Oftentimes when I'm talking to white folks, I say I'm not Greek, but I go to opera. I'll take my daughter to the symphony, right? We got parody when people realize that they've only viewed my culture through white media. You can't learn salsa culture on MTV. You're not gonna learn about hip-hop on BET. And sometimes I think white people are so mentally lazy when it comes to other cultures due to their own lack of their own culture and understanding of their cultural nuances, that they don't question that they don't really know what hip-hop is. So I usually tell people in my pitch that if I can't get you to bring your ass to a hip-hop show and feel more, you know, for health and wellness, then I've not done my job. You know what I'm saying? People have all these biases, but they don't think past them to think more critically. So it's not just for the black kids here, although I don't turn down black kids. I want them to really, it's so paramount that they know what hip-hop is. But I also think due to the racism and the bias that white people hold that has such a stronghold on the outcomes of our lives, you know, and our mortality, I think it's really essential for us to throw fat-ass hip-hop shows in places like Albany, right? You know, I threw a show at the DeYoung Museum with Soul Development, and Kariga Bailey was holding his little daughter rapping, and there was like 200 white kids breakdancing and stuff, and their parents were flabbergasted. They'd never seen that before. You know, when they see people like me, oftentimes it's the white media that is, you know, designed for white boys, mostly college-age white men who want to play their, you know, cops and robber game mentally. I don't know. White people have a monopoly on violence, so they've been buying into that in media forever. But when they buy into a beautiful culture that has all its facets and they just buy into that violent space, it becomes more necessary for me to find people like y'all that might be willing to throw down some dollars to invest first off in these narratives and making them accessible for the few black kids that are out here so they can see positive representations. But secondarily, so white people can stop being so damn scared of us, you know? Because we don't live together for a real reason. And we're not gonna change the economics of where we live in a racist place like the Bay Area. We don't have enough money in the black community to have a chance, right? That's why I had to move to Emeryville so I could have a better school. And the fact that we know we have to move places around white people to have better schools is insidious. It's insidious. It's evil. It's so evil, but we just have to do it. So how do I get people in places like this where all the white dollars are from the white property taxes to invest in hip-hop artists that have to live in deep East Oakland are the ones that are growing up in the Rise Center in Richmond? You know what I'm saying? I got artists that'll knock y'all socks off. You know what I'm saying? I got live graffiti. I just brought the Drip Fest out where we gave 5,000 articles of clothes, toiletries. Lady Barbara JoJo, she gave free haircuts. We had 24 health and wellness orgs, gave out flu vaccinations, Umoja Health, Dr. Kim's Rose ran out of that. And I was working my ass off with Francesca Gonzalez at Freedom Forward in San Francisco, anti-trafficking org. And it's just us scrounging to fund a $30,000 show. And I shouldn't have had to work that hard. I shouldn't. She shouldn't have had to work that hard. That was you know, draining. But if y'all won't give me the money, then I'll do it by myself. So it's not if we can do it. It's if y'all have the audacity to do some real hip-hop shit. You know what I'm saying? If you want to, I'll have alphabet rockers out here killing it. I'll have representations of powerful black women talking about stuff that these white people didn't think that black people cared about. And that's a damn shame because we're so segregated more than ever in the history of this nation. That's why it's essential, like we were talking about before, we need hip-hop artists in the room when we're ideating about programs, especially if we're trying to deal with black and brown people. So if we're trying to have some representation for good hip-hop, that's what I started Hip Hop for the Future for. That's literally the mission of my company, to be the bridge between people with dollars and people who want to create impact. And you know, a lot of times those people are getting older and whiter, and these communities that have the power, the voice, the organizing resources, but don't have no money. So that's what we do.
Any other questions?
I would love to get it popping in Albany. Safely.
Yes.
Yeah, because we had one show out here, but I just didn't feel safe. I was like, you know.
Okay. Well, it looks like there's no more questions. So thank you so much for giving us a presentation.
Thank you. I'll be well.
Thank you. Yeah, we're kind of restricted by rules, you know, about how we can do things and stuff. But we can certainly talk to our council members and try to hook you up and see if something can be done. So that would be really different for Albany, which would be really good.
Oh, and can I just add one thing as well? Especially considering hip-hop, since hip-hop is about 70% by suburban white college-age men. Y'all have a lot of suburban college-age white men. And those people are going to be our bosses, our lawyers, our firemen, our police officers, and right? So I think it's essential for them to have hip-hop in their city too. 1991, the #1 song was Fight the Power, and that was bought by mostly white men. But we want white men to buy it. Right now, they don't have access to real culture because the media doesn't need them to. But black people do. So I think it's essential for us to have events like this so white people can see the beauty of our culture.
We've already had public comment on the topic.
Okay. Okay, now we move on to discussing and possible action on matters related to the following items. And we're going to start with subcommittee updates, which is the City Equity Statement Subcommittee, the Citywide Racial Equity Survey Subcommittee, and the Read Along Program Subcommittee.
Public comment.
Oh, and now we can take public comment on item 6.
Well, if you guys have updates, you would give those first, and then we can take public
Okay.
comment afterwards.
Oh, okay. So I guess we can start with the City Equity Statement Subcommittee.
I don't really have an update, but I did talk to Yos about making a city equity statement and updating that, and she has gone back to me, but we haven't really figured anything out yet, so maybe I can email her again.
So are you guys going to maybe try to get together this month?
Well, yeah, that's the plan, but
Okay.
yeah, we'll see how it goes.
And the next one is the Citywide Racial Equity Survey Subcommittee.
Sure. So that's the two of us, but since you're chairing. So we did meet with city staff on the racial equity survey. Just a brief timeline. It was early 2021 when the SEJC sent the racial equity survey recommendation to the council. And so it's been about 2.5 years now. There were a lot of fits and starts and delays. But when we did meet with the city manager and a couple of staff people, and the council did, for anybody who doesn't know, the council did select the Justice Collective, which was the group that the SEJC had asked them to pick, that they clearly understood what was needed here. They've done racial equity surveys. They are a BIPOC-led group. They know their stuff and their heart's in the right place and they really get it. So where it's at right now is that the city is working out the final contract with the Justice Collective.
Actually, the contract was finalized today.
Woohoo! All right. Great. So then we'll probably get together with staff again now that we, to go over the contract and see how we can be helpful on this. And the idea for people who don't know, and I can answer questions on this, is that they're going to be analyzing the data from different subgroups. So what is the lived experience of white people living in Albany? What's the lived experience of Latinos living in Albany and Asian folk living in Albany and black folk living in Albany? and maybe the indigenous, but I don't know how many indigenous folk we have. And then the idea from that is then to take that data and see, from a scientific survey, and I think that what we think will happen is that white people will be amazed because we're kind of in denial about what the lived experience of Black and Latinos are, in particular, in Albany, and that we can start seeing what we can do to move the needle. And then the idea is that maybe every 2-3 years, this racial equity survey will be repeated, and we can see, did we successfully move forward? That's the idea. It's to hold ourselves accountable and to make people know what it's really like. This kind of survey, I don't know how long it'll take once they kick it off. We have to get the questions together. This is going to be led by the Justice Collective. I'm not a professional on this stuff, but we are the subcommittee right now, and we can certainly make recommendations, for instance, on questions, and on other things. Oh, the other thing that we did ask for is that they also find a way to survey people who are visiting Albany, and people who work in Albany but don't just live in Albany. Because there can be some kind of traumatic experiences for people, frankly, just from working in Albany or from attempting to visit the city. So I don't know if that's part of the contract or not, but we did request it. So that's where we're at right now. I'm very excited to hear the contract is signed. That's pretty spectacular. Do you know any details?
None yet, no.
Okay, all right. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. So I'm sorry, what are they going to do with the results of the survey?
So what'll happen is that when cities buy surveys, when they're basically buying, a picture of reality, is that they're going to they're going to analyze the data. They're going to send out the surveys in multiple modes because you don't get a very good data set if you just send an email to everybody or something like that, And so they're going to send it out in multiple modes. They're going to have to get enough people of different ethnicities in order to get valid data without excuses. And then they're going to present the data to the city, and that'll be a public document. So did that answer the question?
No.
Okay, could you clarify?
Okay, so I would be one of the people filling this out, and it would be
All of
for
us.
people. Yes, but I'm Black, so
Exactly.
in Albany, so it would, my opinion would count or something.
Yes.
So the question that just goes through my mind is, what is the point of me doing it? What is going to be better because I filled out the survey?
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, what.
Well, this is not a panacea or some kind of all we have to do is do racial equity surveys in the U.S. to solve racism. It's not like that.
Yes.
Because that would be beyond absurd. But the idea is that white folk hold the power, and white folk are mostly in denial about the lived experience of Black and brown folk in white society. And so it's when people see the actual data of what happens to people on a daily basis, we think it'll be hard to deny because it's a scientific survey. So it's sort of a reality awakening type thing that we hope for. Mm-hmm. The second thing is it holds us accountable so that when there's another survey in 2 or 3 years or whatever the time period mm-hmm. is, we can see, did we make things better or not, mm-hmm. right? There's something you can measure there to see, are we making any progress whatsoever, or are we just sitting there doing nothing, right? So that's the idea.
Okay. Can I make a suggestion for it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it just for consideration, it might be helpful to also include like anecdotals of what people's like lived experiences are, because I mean, there aren't that many Black people that live in Albany. I say hello to the ones that I see. But I just wonder how much data, like valuable, like information you're gonna get from it. Like, I don't know how honest I would be in that survey, only because I am not sure it matters.
Right.
Not because I don't mind doing a survey, but I'm like, is this gonna change anything if I do this? So maybe I like the idea of like kind of helping people see. It would be nice to actually hear like, oh, this is an experience that I've had that, you know, would be great if I didn't have it in the future or no one else did, to go along with the research. I don't know how you would do that, because I'm sure the surveys are, you know, you don't get names and things like that, but maybe, I mean, I would share, but I'm sure some people would. I've heard stories. So there are people that have experienced a variety of things, but I think that would be more connecting, I guess, in addition to the data.
So we can suggest that, absolutely. And this is actually, what we can say is, this is coming from the RISE Commission. The RISE Commission has some suggestions for you, and one of them is that you take, you know, anecdotal evidence. Maybe we need to find a different word.
Yeah.
But, you know, actual examples of lived experiences, or whatever words are used, but I know what you mean. With the, after the murder, there were some listening sessions in Albany that were done. They were very powerful. And in the racial equity impact plan that we have and that was accepted by council, it says we should do more listening sessions. And based on what you're saying, I think that adds a little push to that. And it's one of the things that we could ask council to work on as a work item. But I don't see why there couldn't be space, especially for online, people who are doing it online, or maybe if they're even doing it on paper, just, you know, can you tell us about, you know, so, and those things are very powerful in white. They don't mean, in my experience, too much to Black and brown folk, because they already know that that's what's going on. But white folk, including me, are just kind of shocked to hear this stuff. It's like, I know better, I shouldn't be shocked, but it's still shocking, if that kind of makes sense. Mm-hmm. So it is powerful. It is really powerful. And also, they're going to have to think about, we can ask them, you know, I didn't realize that Black folks might be skeptical about bothering to do this. And so how are we going to, you know, communicate that this is actually worth it, that there's at least some hope. There's no guarantee, because we haven't done it yet, but at least there's some hope that this will help, right?
Yes, that would be nice, because I saw some survey, and I got the email, and I didn't fill it out for probably 2 months, because I was like, And then I was bored one day, and I was like, all right, I'll answer the questions. But that's just,
Yeah.
I would try to be optimistic in general, but that was kind of how I approached it.
Well, this isn't like a community satisfaction survey,
Yeah.
which can be pretty dry, and you know, I often don't fill those out myself, to be honest. I'm sorry, you know.
You're fine. Yes.
But this one is going to be specifically and only a racial equity survey.
Okay.
So it's not just some miscellaneous thing buried into like a bunch of nonsense. This one is very focused and has a purpose. And the people that are running it know what they're doing and have done this in other cities and stuff. Specifically racial equity surveys. One of the problems that happened is that at first they recommended a group that it was a nice try, but they really weren't acceptable. They had never done a racial equity survey. They were all white folk except one black person looked very tokenistic, you know, on their staff out of like 30 people or something. It was really, we were just kind of aghast. And that was one of the things that slowed down the process, because we had to restart. We had to say that group is not going to work, and we had to restart the process. And the council listened, to their credit, and staff listened, and so we ended up with a much better company doing it. So I'm hopeful, you know.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, or? Yeah.
I actually do have a question, and I don't know if it could like necessarily be answered now, but how would we reach out to like, and I think you might have already answered it as well, but how would we reach out to the people, or like people that visit Albany? Like,
I don't know, but the Justice Collective are pros, you know, and maybe it's people on the street, you know, in Solano, right? And Solano and San Pablo or whatever. That might be a way. I don't know. Justice Collective is the pros, and I don't know if the contract even included that, because we haven't seen the contract yet. We made that request, but we're not staff, we're not city council, we can only ask. So, and the same thing for black folk and well, for all folk that are working in Albany, but we're really interested in what black and brown folk in particular say. And so, you know, somehow you gotta, you know, find where the folk are. You gotta have a no excuses approach to this kind of thing, because if you allow yourself excuses, it will not happen, because it's not easy. So I don't know the answer, but hopefully Justice Collective will know, and or maybe we'll get some community ideas or something. I don't know, Coffrey, if you got anything. Can I ask a public comment on this? Yeah, yes, please.
Yeah.
I don't want to be taken as harsh on this, but I just kind of want to break down this effort, right? Again, we're trying to get some information in the hopes that white people as a voting collective start to vote or move the needle. I see that as a losing plan, especially when you are using data like that. And I'm going to use a kind of messed up analogy, but if you wanted to stop assaults, you wouldn't take a survey of people who've been assaulted and put assaulters to see if everybody can look at that data and parse something from it, right? I don't see white people surveying as anything but a waste of tax dollars, you know what I'm saying? I think something that might actually be more beneficial, number one, paying black people. You have 810 black residents in Albany. It would be a lot more cost effective to survey all of them and pay them for their collective time. You could pay them for the money you would spend on trying to survey white people for data that you really don't need. I think the biggest problem is white folks in Albany that don't care are not, they're just gonna be in their houses. They're not gonna come to equity meetings, things like that. But if you wanna change the hearts and minds of people, oftentimes we just get this data, and sometimes we don't focus on the actual stories of black people. Like, you know, people do not understand the terror it is to be black. They might understand because maybe their white daughters have been, you know, assaulted before. They might see that lens, but they do not see the terror of black women walking around Albany, right? They do not understand this stuff. So I think it might be better. You might be able to take some tax dollars, get it from the commissioners to pay 810 black people to get real stories. And imagine if you had a survey where you literally surveyed all the black people in Albany and found out how they felt about white people in Albany. That would be eye-opening. And I think that would be a lot more cost-effective than wasting your time asking white people how they feel about race and justice. I think that any dollar spent on trying to figure out white people for the next 100 years is gonna be a waste of time. We should spend money empowering black people, primarily black women, pay them for their opinions, and then hopefully we can actually get some of the white people who are white moderates to see the profound, like monolithic terror that black people face every day. Because I think that people need to see the terror. And I don't think that survey doesn't seem like it's gonna show terror. So yeah, I gotta go as well. I gotta get back to my baby girl because I'm the best father in the world. So I love y'all. It's a challenge to all dads out there.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Generally, we do it at the end of all the items. We kind of jumped in on that one.
But I don't know.
Well, if you want to comment about the read-along, maybe you can wait till after we discuss it.
Well, why don't we just allow it?
Okay.
You'll be able to speak on all of the items, or I'm sorry, all the parts of this item during public comment for this item.
All right. So we're going to move to the next one? Okay.
Okay, and the last subcommittee is the read-along program subcommittee.
Do you want to give it, or you want? Oh, okay, all right. So we got into contact with the library, the Albany Reads program, and so far there's not much of an update, except for they do want to work together with us. So we're waiting to figure out how we can do that. That's kind of it for now.
They also offered to like provide books for free, so we wouldn't have to worry about paying for books. And then they sent us like a list of themes to like talk about, at least that they're talking about, such as like harm and trauma, impacts of social media, hate speech, humor, anti-Black racism, gender norms, stuff like that.
So are you planning to meet with them in this next month, or what's the plan?
Yes, that is a good plan. That's what they're asking, if we want to meet up to discuss everything, see what we can do moving forward. So, seems exciting.
Great. And at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're making, we can do things with presentations like this time with Hip Hop for the People and Coffee J, but mostly we're seeing what recommendations can we make to council. What are we asking council to do, or we don't have to ask council to do something, but if there's something that the city can do, we have to ask the council. So that's going to be this for all the subcommittees at the end of the day. So the council is already funding the library because that's a council thing. Mm-hmm. But it might be that we're asking them to specifically fund some other stuff or like that.
Yes, we'll have to see, because this program is actually aligned to what we want, because they are connected with the schools, which we are not able to do on our own. So joining with them will allow us to, have the vision, be able to do the vision that was originally presented.
Yeah, the library, I'm not sure about library funding. I think there may be county and state and federal funding at some level, but I think Albany also funds the library. So this sounds like it's kind of a city-school partnership thing, which is great. So anyway.
Yes, it says they're partnered with the school district and with the city, so.
Beautiful, yeah.
So we'd like to work with them, and I'm sure we could ask for money, just gotta figure out for what.
Yeah, we could also have them do a presentation, right? If you think that would be good.
The Albany Reads?
We can ask, we usually have time for 1 or 2 presentations every meeting. And so that's one way that we can uplift things, is to bring in groups that we would like to promote that maybe people don't know about and like that. And so you can always make suggestions to our chair and to the staff person, to Jonathan, as to groups that we would like to invite to do a presentation,
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
We'll talk and consider it in our group. Thank you.
Okay, great. Now we can go on to working 6.2, which is,
Public comment.
oh, yes, public comment.
Are you Mr. Klaus? Is that your last name?
That's
Klaus? May I have permission to speak to something the hip-hop guy said?
This is the portion for public comment on the items for the.
So no,
subcommittee updates.
just simple no, that'll do, thank you.
Oh, that's a yes.
I know where we are, kind of. Okay.
Excuse me, ma'am, that was a yes.
That I could?
Yes.
Oh, okay. In terms of when, I didn't get his full name, but Jay was, this is so loud. Jay was talking about getting hip-hop in Albany, and I am just suggesting that someone approach the school district because there are black student groups in the schools, and there are also so many young people that are into hip-hop and rap that it would be a wide interest to students in the district. Also, I don't know how it would appeal to these young white males he's mentioning that listen to hip-hop to get them attending these things. Okay, so that was that. Now these updates here, the read-along, I was just trying to find out more about it because I tried to look it up. Let's see. Wow. I forget which one of you was giving a list of, I'm moving to the, let me just collect myself, excuse me. How's my time? Not much, okay. Responding to you, Jeanette, it is about our stories. So I'm with you for what you're saying about anecdotal. And this thing, like Jim, when you mentioned, it's hard to deny because it's science, is part of that white supremacist mindset, because science typically is defined with that frame. So, you know, there's a lot of science in stories. That's where the information, the true information, and until people can feel the pain, they're not going to get to the joy of behaving correctly. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Now we can go on to discussing a racial equity office/officer work plan item, which is explore the viability and possible benefit of the creation of a city racial equity office and/or a city staff racial equity officer.
Well, shall I start trying to? Do you want to, Jonathan? Do you want to give one to? I don't know your name. Want to grab one of these just because we gave it out to everybody else. So the old SEJC had a subcommittee that was working on this, and I was on that subcommittee. This is one of the items that's in the racial equity impact plan, and that was accepted a couple of years ago. I don't remember exactly when, and was a result of the infamous murder that sort of woke people up a bit. So this is just notes from where we were, and we were. I mean, we could give people a couple minutes to look it over. I don't know if it makes sense for me to read it. It'll be published in the minutes, right?
Yeah, I'll attach it to the agenda tomorrow.
Yeah. So for any member of the public, if you go to Albany's website and look at the minutes from this meeting or the late, it's like a late agenda item, I forget what it's called legally. You attach it to the agenda,
It'll be on the meetings page.
Okay.
There'll be an HTML agenda. It's the same place you can download the agenda and break out the items on, yeah.
all right. So it's available to the public is the point. We had, we were looking at sort of strategic issues. We were going to research equity officers in other cities. We tried a little bit of that. Oh, the Racial Equity Impact Plan was by Nicole Anderson. I couldn't remember her name, but it's in this. It's under researching equity officers in other cities, and it's the first bullet point under item number 5. So at any rate, we were brainstorming about how we could find out about other cities that have racial equity offices and racial equity officers. There were some questions to ask the city here. And on the back page, suggestions for what their job responsibilities would be. At first, it would probably be one person, but we would hope that the office would grow. And the idea of an equity officer is that it would be a professional person embedded within the city, probably reporting to the city manager in this very small city that we have, and would be focused on making sure that we implement the Racial Equity Impact Plan and just whatever else it takes as a full-time staff person working on this issue. That's the idea of the Racial Equity Officer and why it was one of the 9 recommendations from the Nicole Anderson group in the Racial Equity Impact Plan, along with the survey and the listening sessions and several other things. Actually, everything that's on our work plan, I think, comes from the city equity statement, not the read-along, but the other stuff all came from the Racial Equity Impact Plan that was done by Nicole Anderson group. I don't know if that made any sense at all, but at least to get us started to talk about it.
I have a question. Would it be possible to do what's it called, hip hop for the people in place of this?
Well, we could, you're saying so we could ask, I don't know if we can ask tonight or if that has to be agendized for the next month, but we could ask in some form the city council to have the hip hop for the future event be on our work plan. Is that what you mean?
Sort of. So if we hire someone, they're going to get a salary.
Yes.
All that money, in my opinion, would be better used for things like these, where it's actually happening, because whoever that is that's working on these things, they're going to go through so much red tape. Like, I don't really know how much they're going to really be able to effectively, get stuff done. But if we have things where it's like you can participate, it doesn't necessarily have to be that program, although I like that program, and I think people would actually enjoy it. But just other things, like even the read-along program, that's an actual thing so you can participate in, where you actively get awareness, you get to be around people. It just seems like a better use of the money.
Right, so you disagree with the recommendation to have a racial equity officer, but you would say take that same money and use it as a categorical funding or something for anti-racist activities or racial equity activities. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
See what other people think. I don't need to talk on respond to everybody.
I mean, well, I feel like it'd be kind of hard to convince the city that, or not the city, the people in the city that, to spend tax dollars on this. I feel like something that people could actually attend or like see the result of might feel like more helpful, I guess.
Yeah, and like alongside with that, maybe we could like sponsor groups, maybe. I don't know if that's how it works, but I feel like sponsoring like organizations or just like groups that advocate for stuff would be a possible way to spend that money instead as well. I don't know if that made any sense.
Yeah. Anyone else have any?
I agree. I feel like we're trying to create a role that we don't actually need, and that money can be allocated elsewhere, such as like funding for other projects. But it is a good idea. I feel like we can do better with what we have.
Oops. You have any thoughts?
Well, I guess, you know, the Nicole Anderson group, this is kind of what they do. And it was one of her recommendations, and it's city policy at this point, right? We've had problems sometimes dealing with the city staff are not allocated to work on this, you know? So everybody else has like a ton of things on their portfolio. John has a ton of things on his portfolio. And just one of those things is being staff person for this group. But so we don't have anybody in the city who's focused on supporting this work. And having somebody working 40 hours a week in the city, you know, as a city staff person working on racial and social equity issues, I do think is a very good idea and would be very powerful. They could write grants, for example. One thing they could do is write grants to get money to do things, right? But they would be somebody who would be, this would be their job, right, in Albany to work on this stuff that we need. So maybe they would even help run some of these events, you know? Maybe that would be part of what they do. So I still agree with the recommendation, you know, that Nicole Anderson made. If people haven't seen the plan, is it under the RISE Commission, the Racial Equity Impact Plan? Can people get to it if they go to the RISE Commission webpage?
Is it on the city website?
No, it's on the city webpage. I'm just wondering where. It used to be under the SEJC, but that was at least one place it was linked.
So is it set like this is happening? Is that?
So the Racial Equity Impact Plan,
No, the officer, the person, is this set like they will hire someone?
it's a recommendation. So there were nine major, I mean, the whole thing is like a lot of pages, but,
So it's negotiable.
it's a recommendation. Yeah, absolutely. It's a recommendation. I'm sure the city would be very happy not to do it. I don't think that that's going to mean that they're going to spend the money on other stuff, though. You know, and the city has budget issues and like that either way, you know. So the city accepted, so what happens with these plans that get put together, you know, there's a housing plan and there's a racial equity impact plan and there's plans on top of the plans, you know. Is that the threat is that it'll sit on a shelf and never be read or implemented. That's always the threat. And it takes commissions and people calling the council and staff and like that to actually get them to happen, unless you have a champion on the staff. And having a champion on the staff means that stuff tends to happen. So, or a champion on the council, that would be the other, the other place. So this is one of the 9 major recommendations made by the Nicole Anderson Group with the Racial Equity Impact Plan, and that plan was accepted by the council. But council never did say, we will do all 9 of these definitely. So, and anyway, the whole plan is kind of advisory. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So there can be something in a plan, and it just provides guidance to council and staff. It doesn't mean that they're mandated to do it. Okay. So you're right. They could choose not to do that, and they could choose instead to allocate the same amount of money towards funding specific things in this space.
To answer your question, the impact plan is on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion page. The RISE Commission page links to the Diversity, Equity, Inclusivity page.
If somebody goes to the RISE page and you click on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity, then the Racial Equity Impact Plan is there. Okay. Yeah, if people haven't read it, I would encourage people to read it. Because it directly affects us as commissioners. But I think that there's really no, 4 out of 5 people kind of don't think we should have a racial equity officer. So, we might want to just close this one down and say we're not going to work on it because.
So we're kind of getting into murky territory here because the agenda item is to discuss the work plan item. If you don't want to work on it tonight, you can just not work on it. If you want to discuss possibly taking it off your work plan, you'd have to agendize that for a future meeting.
But you mean this stuff is, no, it's discussion and possible action, John. We're allowed to make motions regarding any of these things.
Okay.
Because it is
want to
just.
vote on it because everyone's not here.
Yeah, okay. So we can take that up next time, or people can think about it too, and because we can, if we decide that we don't think a racial equity officer work plan item is appropriate, if there's general agreement, then we could write that up and send that to the council and say, we do think you should, we can say what we believe, right, under this item. So we totally could do that.
My question by looking at this is like the job responsibilities, like recommendations, I guess. Like, who's currently doing that? Because is there anyone doing that?
No, none of this stuff is happening because we don't have a racial equity impact officer. So, but I understand what people are saying, and it makes a lot of sense, actually, right? Let's take that money and spend it directly as opposed to spending it on a staff person. And that's a totally reasonable position, and, I don't agree with it, but it's a totally reasonable position. It makes total sense. So it's more kind of a judgment call about what's more likely to improve things. That's all it is. So I think if either thing happened, I think if the city, my personal opinion is if the city hired a racial equity impact officer, that would be great. Or if the city took the equivalent amount of money and spent it categorically on, racial equity things, that would be great too, So that's kind of, the way I feel. It's, ideally they do both, honestly. But you can't ask for too much at one time because then, people don't react very well.
The second item under job responsibilities, is that the racial equity survey?
It's more than that. What we don't have any authority to direct staff. We can't tell John, get us some data on, like this, or anybody. We don't have any staff. So what that means is that anything we do, we can request the information, but they're not required to give it to us. They're not required to assign a staff person to do that research. So we have to do all of our own research right now, everything, for anything we want to propose. And it can be daunting sometimes, like nobody knows how to find data because we're not professionals at that, or it's just hard to find. So the first part of this was, and this is something that we were working on a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, right? The first part is to provide metrics for Albany. We asked for metrics, for instance, among staff, not just city staff, but among all staff. What are the DEI metrics? How many women are there? How many black folk are leaders of departments? We like to have the same information about schools. How many black teachers do we have? At different levels and like that. How many black principals do we have? And Latino principals, Asian principals, et cetera. We can't get the data. We've asked, we don't get it. That's why we put that on there, because we're flying blind a little bit, We have suspicions, but we don't actually know. So that's the first part of that. And then the second one, one of the things that they would do is just be the kind of the coordinator for the annual or semi-annual DEI survey that we were just talking about earlier, right? And they could do things like, for instance, say, you know what? Because I think Coffrey had a really good point. We don't really need to spend the money to ask white people what's their daily lived experience walking around in Albany. We don't really need that. It's just more politically expedient to do it so certain people don't start screaming, but he's right, in my opinion. So we would save a lot of money and a lot of time if we just did what he said. And having that kind of coordination. City staff is not trained on this stuff. They have no experience with this stuff. They're doing the best they can. They're good folk. But having somebody who really understands, somebody embedded in the city, could be really, really helpful. That's the idea of it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so what I'm taking away is that basically we need to find like a professional person to deal with like all these issues. That's what it is.
Yeah, to provide support and leadership in the city, regarding basically what this commission is doing, racial inclusivity and social equity. Full-time, 2,000 hours a year, right? So that's the idea.
Does anyone else have anything to say?
Why don't we all just think about it, right?
Yeah.
We're missing 2 folk tonight, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a good point, and we can take it up next time. But I would say if there's general feeling on the commission that we should do something different, right? Instead of this, that we should write that up and send that recommendation on to the council. Then we can take up a new work item, instead of that one. There's one other one, the housing stuff, where we don't really have a subcommittee for, and we're not working with it. This is the item 6.2. This is the item that we work on if we have time at the end, right? One possibility is if there's more interest in working on the housing item.
Well, we had the housing element like before.
Oh, okay.
We took it off.
All right.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
In the one they're building, right, by the freeway?
No, the one that's just like,
That whole big old thing.
just the
Yeah.
housing element in general.
I mean, the work plan item is to something like, I don't have the work plan with me, maybe Jonathan or somebody else has it, but something like to work on housing from the point of view of equity, right? Provide recommendations in coordination with other advisory body towards the implementation of the city's housing element, with particular focus on programs to help facilitate increased housing availability for all members of the community, and to work with the city community development department on housing equity issues. We don't have a subcommittee that's working on that, so it could be something that we did together. Right.
I think I don't know. I think there was someone that made a public comment about that early on in one of our meetings. I think that complex that they're building, it will have BMR units in it, if I'm remembering correctly. So that does help with some people to have more affordable housing, because it'll be a lot cheaper to live there. Get the updates. But that's nice, at least there's something happening.
So the agendas are basically made by the chair and the staff person. So that'll be Akinye and John. And so they can decide if they want to make 6-2 next month, be a racial equity officer, or working on the housing item.
I'm sorry, are we talking about future items now?
Yeah, which is next anyway. Sorry about that.
Oh, did you want to take public comment for 6-2?
Yeah.
Good point.
Is there any public comment for 6-2?
I guess the main thing on my mind right now is absurdity and how we're going to get rid of it. I mean, I think I heard, Jim, you say that we've asked for data and we haven't got it because we have no authority to ask for it.
We have no authority to get it.
So you have no authority to ask, actually,
Okay.
which if we just let that sit in our minds, where are we? And that's the task of everybody who's trying to do something now, is to recognize the absurdity of what's going on and find our way to get over it. And appreciate you guys for opening up your parameters, the way you're looking at things, and recognizing ways to do it better or correctly. Bless you guys, and thanks. Bye.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Nothing online, no.
Okay. And now we move on to item 7, which is future agenda items. I think we're discussing maybe housing element on the future agenda item.
Well, we have these two spots. 5-1 is the presentation, and we could talk about possible presentations and see if John has been working on any. Sometimes it takes months to get a particular, presentation from a particular group. So he might be working on some, he might not be. And the other is, what do we want to do with the item to work together? Right now we have 2 items on our work plan that we don't have subcommittees for. It's the racial equity officer and it's the housing one. So which one do we kind of want to work on? Technically, this is not, can't take a vote on something here. We're just supposed to request things that we would like. Is that right, John?
That's right. You can make requests for future agenda items. I did want to say that I have gotten confirmation from Jeff Bond regarding giving a presentation for the housing element, so I am coordinating with him to get a presentation going for a future meeting.
Is that next month, or do you know?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay. So that's the one that you're working on?
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Also, earlier I think we were talking about maybe having a possible presentation from Albany Reads.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, I think we should keep the racial equity officer on the work plan because there's members that aren't here today. So you can,
On the agenda for next month, you mean? Okay.
I do want to clarify, if you want to discuss possibly taking that off as a work plan item from, is that what you were trying to
Well,
discuss before, or?
All of these are for discussion and action.
Okay.
And so when we get, next month, when we get to 6.2, assuming that you and Akinye do decide to have it on the, there, then we can do whatever we want. We could leave it. We could send a recommendation to council and then say, okay, we're done with this work item. So, whatever people want to do, they can do, right? So.
yeah. Well, what I meant is like, just keep it as it is on the work plan for like,
This is the agenda.
oh, sorry,
Yeah.
the agenda. Because the members aren't here, can like discuss it, yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyone else have any?
Future agenda items? I do have sort of a rather long list of possible groups. And I'll tell you what, Jonathan, this list is so long that I'll read it, but then you could just take a picture of this or something. Okay? So, possible speakers or presentations. We could see if the Lijon tribe would come and talk to us. I would really like that, because that could definitely lead to a work item. The Black Parent Engagement Group, Familias Unidas de Albany, Projects CARE and Projects HOPE, which are city projects that people may not know about. The Art Commission has a racial equity project. The library has a racial equity project. There's some AAH clubs, Black Student Union, Latino Student Union. There's like an anti-racist club, or at least there have been historically. Queer clubs, whoever, AHS clubs, we might want to come and have a talk to us. And that could be like 3 different clubs come in on the same night or something. Have AAPEG. I don't even know what that is. I used to, I guess. Does it ring a bell, Jonathan?
Nothing I'm familiar with.
All right, it's not very useful. Alameda County NAACP, maybe? Oakland Rising. Nicole Anderson, who wrote the Racial Equity Impact Plan, could maybe give us a presentation, right? Well, her group did. Survey Company, which is, thank you, Justice Collective. I think that would be really nice speakers to have, since it's like beginning to happen, and we already had Hip Hop for the People. So that was my list of groups that I had just sort of brainstormed that I'd be happy to have any of them. Justice Collective, those be timely. We could tell them exactly, right, what our recommendations were, right? They'd be here. And the Lijon tribe, I think, would be really great, because we don't have anything on our work plan dealing with that, and it's a pretty big item.
Can I say something?
Of course.
So I attend all the BPAC meetings, and I was wondering, like, what do you want them to present about? Like, if I was to tell them that they can present here, what do you want them to talk about?
We did it before, and what happened was all 3 parent engagement groups, actually.
Okay, all 3.
BPEG, Familias Latinas, and the Asian American engagement group. They just came, and it was more like letting us and Albany know that the groups exist, and sort of uplifting them and supporting them. So they just came and they explained, what they are and how they're organized and what they're doing, and told us about that stuff and upcoming events, and it was just a way to connect and uplift. So they've actually done it before.
So you don't want them to do it again?
Oh, I think it would be great to have them here. We have a new commission, and there's lots of other people probably that didn't hear from them before. I think all three of those groups are really important, personally.
And what about the clubs, the BSU, ASU?
What about them?
Like say the same thing, like talk about the same.
We had one club, I think it was an anti-racist club. It was a presentation once, the old SEJC, 2-3 years ago. And it was nice, you know, I mean, well, I almost like to hear from young people about like what the reality is and what young people are doing, you know? And so it's just kind of good to know that that kind of stuff is happening if it is this year. I was just brainstorming groups that could come here and tell us about, like the Art Commission could tell us about their project, and again, it would be sort of promoting it a little bit, and people might not know about it. All these are like, bring a group in that you think is doing good work usually, and they tell you like, you know, hip hop for the people, hip hop for the future, and it promotes them, and you get kind of more connected to them and like that. So it's nothing, you know, they're just, I don't know, does that answer the question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I guess I would prefer to have the presentations from people that we would actually be able to take action to help versus them just coming and like sharing. Like I want to hear about it, but like I don't know how many people watch the videos, so I don't know how much exposure they really get. And I would want to help whoever comes, so I don't know what's actionable on that.
It's tricky because you can't take an act, we can't take an action by law, by state law, on anything that's not on the agenda for action.
No, I mean in the future for your things.
And then by Albany rule, we can't do anything that's not on our work plan. So what could happen though is that that somebody comes in and gives us a presentation and said, we would like the city's help to do X. So then we could say, especially if we put it on the agenda, if we were smart enough to put it on the agenda for that meeting, and later there might be an agenda item saying new work items or something like that. And then we could ask the council at that point, we want to take this as a work item. They approve it at their next meeting, and then the next meeting we could work on it. Does that make sense?
It does. Well, we're currently working on the work plan they already approved, right?
Yeah.
So we should probably finish some of those things first.
They would like us to finish something, and then when we finish something to say, here's another one we'd like. But there's no flat rule in Albany. I mean, one year we had 15 items on our work plan, the old SEJC. It was way too many, don't get me wrong, I'm not recommending that. So if somebody really came in and we were like, oh my God, we need to do that, we could just say, you know, we could just request that that be added to our work plan.
Okay, maybe we could, okay, that was my word. Okay, maybe we could align the groups to come in that work with the current work plan so that we can actually make progress.
Yeah, so
Suggestion.
for those, like things that would align with our work plan, Nicole Anderson would align, the Justice Collective would align, the NAACP might align with the survey and other stuff we're working on, right? But the Art Commission one wouldn't, Karen Hope wouldn't. Probably the engagement groups, except for the read-along, might not. You know, you're right. And I think you have a good point.
I think we also discussed in like the subcommittee with like the staff that we can ask them like what might they want on the survey, kind of.
Subcommittee, wait, say again?
When we met with staff about the survey,
Yeah.
we discussed possibly like discussing with like different affinity groups or like parent engagement groups about like what they want to see on the survey.
Right, I forgot about that. Did you guys follow that? Or, I'll just add on. When we met with staff about the survey, we said, we think that the Justice Collective should probably meet with the parent engagement groups to get some ideas about what questions should be on the survey. And other things I just thought of, like actually reading the transcripts of the 2 listening sessions we already had. Some of the stuff there was really pretty powerful as people got up and told their true stories about stuff that had happened to them in Albany. And so, yeah, obviously you're saying if we had them come maybe geared towards that or something, I don't know.
Yeah, like they don't have to, it's not just for like, I don't know, like publicity or whatever, but like
Yeah,
they can like tell us like what they want to see about on the survey or like, yeah.
I mean, that's true, or it could be both. It could be tell us what's happening, right? And, you know, the survey is coming up and like what questions would you recommend? I mean, none of the parent engagement groups are primarily focused on the Albany schools. And to the degree they're focused on fighting racism, it would be in the context of Albany schools, typically has been my experience. But you know, we could ask, you know, and just, what the heck, right? So, yeah. I think it's a good point. You know, to the degree we can align speakers with our existing work plan items, that would be good.
Is there any other thoughts about future agenda items? No? Okay. Our next meeting is going to be Tuesday, December 5th at 7 p.m. Now, this meeting is adjourned.
All right, thank you.